I'm sorry. What did you say this fine was for? I squinted at the yellow slip fluttering in the wind, taped to the iron gate that marked the entrance to my ranch, my land. Buddy, my golden retriever, stood next to me panting. Wagging his tail like this was just another morning. And it should have been. Except the paper had other plans. In bold, bureaucratic font, it declared, Notice of violation. $750 fine. Unauthorized dog walking on HOA grounds. I blinked once, twice. I wasn't standing on HOA grounds. I was standing on my own soil, 50 acres of it. Bought fair and square with 2 decades of military paychecks and every callous sacrifice that came with wearing the uniform. But there she was, standing smug just beyond the gate, arms crossed in a fresh-pressed HOA polo shirt, like a sheriff in some twisted western. Brenda Wiggins, president of the Willow Creek HOA, possibly the most entitled woman west of the Mississippi. You can't fine me for walking my dog on my ranch, I told her, my voice steady but tightening around the edges like an old rope under strain. She didn't even blink. Actually, she said, flipping her clipboard like she was auditioning for a reality show, we've updated the boundary lines. Your walking path now crosses into protected commons. And per our new regulation, dogs must be carried or transported on HOA land. Buddy let out a bark that almost sounded like a laugh. I chuckled, bitter. You've got 10 days to pay, Brenda added, smirking. Failure to comply means daily fines of $100. And with that, she turned on her heel and strutted back toward the paved road that separated her world of trimmed hedges and passive-aggressive mailers from my stretch of quiet ranchland. I stood there for a while, one hand gripping the cold steel of the gate, the other resting on Buddy's head. Let me tell you something. I've faced down roadside bombs in Kandahar. I've stood between civilians and chaos with sweat pouring down my back and nothing but instinct to guide me. But that day, standing in the morning sun with my dog and a piece of paper telling me I no longer had the right to walk on land I owned, that was a different kind of threat. One wrapped not in violence, but in pettiness. That night, while the crickets sang and the cicadas played their shrill nighttime songs, I cracked open my laptop. I wasn't just going to fight this. I was going to end it. Not with fists, not with lawsuits, with something far quieter, far more permanent. But we're not there yet. You see, this story didn't start with a fine. It started with a dream. 2 years back, I moved to Willow Creek Ranch with a single goal: peace. Real, hard-earned peace. I'd spent my whole life in motion. Deployments, transfers, orders barked down from tin can speakers and blinking red lights in the dead of night. I wanted to wake up to birds, not alerts. To drink my coffee on a porch, not in a tent. And to give Buddy, my constant four-legged shadow since my final tour, the kind of life no dog could dream up in a kennel. The land I bought wasn't part of the Willow Creek HOA. Not even close. My ranch sat outside their gates, literally and legally, separated by a gravel path, a line of trees, and a strand of barbed wire that had rusted under years of sun and indifference. But that didn't stop Brenda. She came knocking, well, more like hovering, within a week of my moving in. Clipboard in hand, lipstick too red for a morning visit. She smiled like a python in Sunday pearls. Oh, hi. You must be the new rancher, she chirped. You're technically outside our community, but we like to maintain a certain standard in the area. I remember nodding politely. Buddy, on the other hand, growled. Quiet, subtle. The kind of growl that says, not now, but I'm watching you. I should have listened to him. The first few months passed like I hoped they would. Quiet walks, fence repair, sunset beer on the porch while Buddy chased grasshoppers in the pasture. I kept to myself, waved to the occasional jogger, tipped my hat at passing cyclists, and for a while they waved back. But then came the first letter. Dear Sir, your dog's barking echoes across the southern hedgerow. Please consider training him to bark less. Then came the second. Your tree limb extends approximately 3.5 feet into HOA airspace. Kindly trim it. Then came the 4th of July. I lit a few sparklers and a Roman candle. Nothing fancy. Just me and Buddy watching little lights fly up into the night like we used to do overseas when we had downtime and cheap munitions. Brenda called the fire marshal. Claimed I was operating explosive devices near residential zones. It didn't stick, but the message did. Brenda didn't want me around. Not because I was loud, or dangerous, or disorderly, but because she couldn't control me. You ever meet someone like that? Who isn't happy unless they're telling someone else what to do? Doesn't matter if it makes sense. Doesn't matter if it helps anyone. Power, to folks like Brenda, is its own reward. I brushed it off. I'd faced worse. Much worse. But something changed the day that fine appeared. That paper wasn't just a nuisance. It was a message. You don't belong here. And that's where most people back down. Pay the fine. Avoid the trouble. Try to appease the Brendas of the world so they can go back to sipping their coffee and minding their business. But I'm not most people. That night, while Buddy snored beside my recliner, I mapped out every parcel of land surrounding the Willow Creek HOA. Every trail, easement, lake, and patch of common land they loved to use but didn't legally own. It was more than you'd think. Developers leave gaps. Cities forget to transfer deeds. And when folks assume ownership long enough, they stop checking who really holds the title. I made some calls. Hired a property attorney named Vincent. Quiet guy. Sharp as a damn tack. And we got to work. But again, that's a story for the next chapter. Right now, I want you to imagine standing on your porch. Coffee in hand. Dog at your feet. The air smells like pine and old wood. And across the way, there's a woman who thinks she owns the sky above your roof because it offends her HOA aesthetic. Would you fold? Would you bow? Or would you stand your ground? Because here's the truth they never tell you about peace. Sometimes peace isn't the absence of war. Sometimes peace is the line you draw when someone keeps stepping over it. Sometimes peace wears boots. And sometimes, just sometimes, peace comes with barbed wire, camera feeds, and a damn good dog who always knows which humans to growl at. So when Brenda smirked and said, "You've got 10 days," she didn't know it yet, but she just lit the fuse. 3 days after that yellow fine notice, I stood in the county office with a folded map in one hand and a question on my lips. How exactly does an HOA redraw boundary lines on property they don't own? The woman behind the desk wore glasses too big for her face and the kind of smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You'll need to speak to zoning," she said, tapping a laminated sign like it was gospel. Zoning was 3 doors down and filled with file cabinets that smelled like a courtroom and old coffee. The clerk there pulled up the digital overlay of the Willow Creek buffer zones, her nail clicking against the screen. "You see here? This strip of land is now considered a community transition zone per Amendment 14C of their bylaw restructuring." I asked when it was approved. She blinked. HOAs don't need county approval for internal regulations as long as they don't conflict with public codes. But it did conflict with my deed. And that's where the threads started to unravel. You ever watch someone realize they've stepped into something deeper than they thought? That clerk, poor soul, realized it as she compared my title, registered in 2020, with their precious Buffer Zone A. That zone hadn't existed then. Hell, it didn't even show up in the 2021 survey. Someone had drawn a new line on a shared map and started enforcing it like it was federal law. It wasn't about dogs. It never was. It was about making me yield. To remind the outsider that, despite not living inside their gates, I still had to play by their script. That night, I sat on my porch with Buddy and thought of all the men I'd served with, good men, honest men, who'd fought for this country only to come home and be told to watch the tone of your wind chimes. And something inside me snapped. Not loud, not messy, just a quiet click like a safety being disengaged. The next morning, I called Vincent, a friend of a friend who'd once helped an old platoon buddy win a land dispute against a crooked subdivision in Nevada. Vincent's voice was smooth, the kind of calm you either hated or trusted instantly. "You want to go to court?" he asked. "No," I said. "I want to build a fortress." And so we began. Not with bricks or fences, not yet, but with data, deeds, and county records going back 40 years. Turns out, the land around Willow Creek was a patchwork of assumptions. Trails used for HOA events were actually under the name of a dissolved development LLC in Florida. A fishing pond? Technically private land listed as undeveloped green space, owned by a church that had closed its doors 15 years ago. The parking lot Brenda bragged about during her annual meetings? That wasn't HOA land either. It belonged to a defunct landscaping company that had never removed their claim. The moment Vincent saw the potential, he said one word: acquisition. Now here's the thing about buying land quietly. You can't do it with your own name. You need shell companies, transactional buffering, and a damn good reason not to alert the locals. Because the moment they sense a threat to their kingdom, they rally. HOA folks are like hornets. You don't poke the nest unless you're ready for war. So I didn't poke. I crept. In 6 weeks, I owned more than anyone knew. Not just the pond. Not just the trails. I bought an overgrown orchard that Brenda once used for yoga events. I acquired the picnic hill where they hosted 4th of July barbecues. Even the gravel lot where visitors parked during open house weekends, mine. I left it all untouched, for now. No signs, no tape, just silence. But power, real power, is not about what you say, it's what you own. And one crisp Thursday morning, I decided it was time to let them know. I printed signs, simple white with bold red letters: private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted. I posted them at every point of entry around the HOA's beloved communal zones. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I just stated the truth. And within hours, the neighborhood exploded. Calls flooded into the HOA hotline. Emails with subject lines like emergency and code red were leaked onto a local message board. Brenda called an emergency meeting, stomping down the sidewalk in heels too loud for morning hours, demanding to know who had blocked access to their shared assets. That afternoon, she marched up to my ranch gate. No clipboard this time, just fury. "You can't do this," she yelled. "This is harassment." I stepped out holding a folder in one hand and my phone in the other, recording every word. "Actually," I said, "I can. And I have. Here's the deed. And here's the footage of you trespassing last week during your nature walk." She went silent. But her silence wasn't surrender. It was calculation. That night, something dark stirred. I woke at 2:13 a.m. to Buddy growling low by the door. The motion lights had kicked on. I grabbed the flashlight and a bat, creeping to the edge of the pasture. And there I saw it, fresh tire marks near my east fence, a pair of bolt cutters abandoned in the weeds. Someone had tried to breach my property. They didn't get in, but they wanted me to know they could. That was enough. I spent the next day hiring a crew, 12 men, quiet workers, paid in cash. We hauled in cedar planks and steel posts. Within 2 weeks, a solid 8-foot wall ran along the entire edge of Willow Creek. No more shared views. No more peeking through trees to judge my wild grass. Just wood, bolts, and a statement. "You don't own me." The complaints started immediately. "You're ruining our view. Our morning walks feel claustrophobic." Brenda filed a formal grievance with the county, citing the wall as a visual hazard. She was told quite plainly that it met every building code, that it was legal, that she could pound sand. So she switched tactics. A week later, I received a cease and desist from the HOA, accusing me of building a nuisance wall. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my coffee. Brenda thought she could outpaper a man who dealt with military red tape in 4 languages. I called Vincent. "She wants a fight," I said. "Then let's give her one she won't forget." We filed a development plan, not for condos, not for housing, for something better, a sanctuary, a private wildlife and veteran retreat zone. No HOA approval needed, no access granted, but we'd make it beautiful enough that they'd ache to be part of it. And we would invite everyone except them. But power doesn't give up easy. And Brenda? She wasn't finished. Late one night, long after the wall was finished and the trail cams installed, I saw her again, standing just past the boundary line, staring at the mural someone had painted on my side. A picture of Buddy, surrounded by sunflowers. She didn't yell. didn't curse. Just stood there, arms folded, as if daring me to speak. I didn't. I watched. And in her silence, I saw what she feared most. Not noise. Not lawsuits. Not even me. She feared irrelevance. And that's exactly what I gave her. But I knew this was just the middle of the story. The part where things break before they rebuild. Before the truth is forced into the light. And she was about to burn her own empire to the ground. The fire started just before dawn. I remember the glow more than the heat. I was drinking my first cup of coffee on the porch, Buddy sprawled at my feet, when a flash of orange lit up the sky in the direction of the Willow Creek clubhouse. At first, I thought it was just someone burning trash, a common enough sin around here. But then I saw the smoke. Thick, black, angry. It rolled above the tree line like a storm summoned from the earth itself. I grabbed the binoculars I kept by the door and focused in. And that's when I saw it. The clubhouse, the HOA's pride and joy, a $600,000 monument to micromanagement, engulfed in flames. I didn't smile. I didn't laugh. I just stood there, motionless, watching that building melt, because I knew what came next. They'd blame me. By mid-morning, the sheriff's department was crawling all over the place. Fire trucks had long since doused the blaze, but nothing could unburn what had been lost. Decades of framed photos, HOA trophies, commemorative plaques, Brenda's beloved portrait wall. That building wasn't just a clubhouse. It was her throne room. And sure enough, by 10 a.m., a deputy cruiser rolled up my driveway. 2 officers stepped out, hats in hand, trying to look casual. One of them, Logan, I'd met before. Good man. Quiet eyes. He tipped his hat. Mr. Graham, he said. We just have a few questions. I figured you would, I replied. Sweet tea or security footage? He blinked, then chuckled. You got footage? I didn't answer. I just handed him the flash drive. Every angle. Night vision. Motion triggered. I'd had cameras running nonstop since the bolt cutter incident. I'd learned, in war and peace, that evidence is the only language people stop to listen to. By that evening, I got the call. They'd arrested someone. Not me. Jason Wiggins. Brenda's nephew. You ever feel your stomach drop and rise all at once? Like hitting a pothole at high speed? That was me right then. Jason had been HOA's errand boy for years. Early 20s, buzz cut, too much gym time, too little job time. The kind of kid who wore sunglasses indoors and revved his Dodge Charger just to hear it echo. Brenda had vouched for him, protected him, even got him an auxiliary safety officer badge. A fake title that gave him authority over nothing but boosted his ego like helium. Turns out, a neighbor's Ring camera had caught Jason skulking around the clubhouse hours before the fire. Red gas can in one hand, hoodie pulled over his head. The footage was grainy, but clear enough. Then came the kicker. Someone leaked Brenda's emails. 2 nights before the fire, she'd written to Jason. Someone needs to remind Mr. Graham he's not king of the hill. He's just a dog walker with land. That line. That damn line. It was like peeling back a rotting plank and finding the termites crawling underneath. She hadn't told him to burn it down, not directly. But she'd fed him the fire. News broke fast. The local paper ran a headline the next morning. HOA clubhouse burns. Suspect tied to HOA president. Brenda tried damage control. Claimed she hadn't spoken to Jason in weeks. Claimed he'd been troubled. But the paper got a hold of the leaked email. It was over. By the next board meeting, Brenda was suspended pending investigation. But she showed up anyway. Walked in like she still ran the place. Half the room turned their backs on her. One woman stood up and said, "We're done paying for your mess. Tony told me about it later," said Brenda, left in tears. And just like that, the Queen of Willow Creek was dethroned. But the story wasn't over. You see, that clubhouse had sat on land they never legally owned. Most folks assumed the developer had donated it. But the deal had never closed. I discovered that little detail during my late-night county record dives with Vincent. And I'd bought it. Quietly. Cleanly. Weeks before the fire. So now it was mine. Or rather, the smoldering ruins of it were. I had options. I could build a barn, a cabin, or let it sit there, blackened and silent, a monument to what arrogance destroys. But something else had started shifting. Neighbors began visiting. First just a few, curious, cautious, then more. Tony brought his daughter, Sophia, a bag of peanut butter biscuits for Buddy in hand. "We just wanted to say thanks," he said. "You stood up when the rest of us stayed quiet. I appreciated it. But I wasn't looking to be a hero. I just wanted peace. Real peace." That's when I got the letter. Delivered by courier. Thick envelope. Gold seal. A new development group wanted to meet. They'd seen the land, the sanctuary plans, the media buzz. They wanted to propose an eco-village. Solar cabins. Community gardens. Hiking trails. With my ranch at the center. It looked appealing. The man they sent wore a sharp gray suit and a silk tie that cost more than my boots. "We're not asking you to sell," he said. "Just partner. We handle the borders. You keep the heart." It was tempting. Too tempting. But I'd learned something about control. It rarely announces itself. It shows up with compliments, with smiles, with partnerships. And before you know it, someone's telling you your dog needs to be carried on your own porch. I told him I'd think about it. That night, I walked the edge of my land. The burn site still smelled of ash. I found Brenda there, alone. No makeup, no clipboard, just a tired woman staring at the wreckage of her former life. "I came to say sorry," she said, voice small. I didn't answer. "I let power turn into poison," she added. "You beat me, not with anger, with patience." I stared at her. This woman who had fined me, mocked me, tried to bury me in rules. And now, she looked a human. "I don't expect forgiveness," she whispered. Good, because I wasn't offering it. Not yet. The next morning, I posted a sign at the sanctuary gate. "Community inquiries welcome, except Willow Creek HOA." And below it, in fine print, "Unauthorized dog walking, $750 per paw." People laughed. Some applauded. The local news ran another segment. But just when I thought we'd found peace, a new SUV rolled up, black, unmarked. Out stepped a man with a government badge and a binder. "Mr. Graham," he said, "we need to talk. The state's considering eminent domain. Highway expansion. Right through your sanctuary." I exhaled. So this is how it was going to be. One war down, another rising. But they hadn't learned yet. You don't back a soldier into a corner and expect him to fold. You give him reason to stand taller. Because the fight for peace never really ends. It just changes its uniform. The man from the State Development Authority stood like a statue at the edge of my porch. His brown blazer neat as pressed linen and his face so still it made the wind look alive. Buddy sat beside me, his body tensed, ears flicking back. I wasn't surprised. Not after everything that had happened. Burned clubhouses, corporate offers, and HOA battles had taught me something. When suits show up uninvited, they're rarely bringing good news. Harold Burns, that was his name. He introduced himself in a monotone like he was reading from a script. "Mr. Graham, your land, specifically the southern border of your sanctuary, has been marked for potential acquisition under eminent domain. There is a proposed state highway expansion project. On paper, your property is the most efficient route." Efficient. Like I was just a dot on a blueprint. I let his words sit in the space between us while the breeze pushed dust down my gravel drive. "So let me get this straight," I said slowly, setting down my coffee. "I just spent the last year fighting off a private HOA hellhole that tried to fence me in, and now the government wants to steamroll the same patch of peace I bled for?" He didn't flinch. "This isn't personal, sir. It's infrastructure." That word again. Infrastructure. Used like it had a moral compass. "Let me guess," I said. "Some old board members still licking their wounds from the HOA collapse made a few calls?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. I recognized the play. When one bully fails, they call in a bigger one. Brenda might have lost her kingdom, but she still had fingers in the system, still knew how to push buttons. This was her last grenade. "You'll be compensated," Harold added. Like money was the same thing as legacy. Market rate. Construction would begin in 12 months. I stared out toward the garden where Sophia had painted the Buddies Run sign. Past that was the mural wall, now filled with color and handprints. And further still, the oak tree under which old Mrs. Turner came to sit every morning just to breathe in peace. That land wasn't dirt. It was memory. "You'll have your answer," I said. "At the public hearing." He handed me a thick folder and walked back to his government-issued SUV. I didn't watch him leave. I called Vincent. "Get ready," I told my lawyer. "It's war again." Within 48 hours, we launched the Save Willow Ranch campaign. This time, I didn't stay quiet. We went loud. Drones captured sweeping views of the sanctuary. Veterans told their stories on camera. Parents recorded their children learning how to plant vegetables or feeding goats. Buddy got his own promo reel, running across the open fields, barking happily. I even recorded a short clip of myself, sitting under the oak. "This land isn't just mine," I said, looking straight into the lens. "It belongs to everyone who's ever been fenced out, priced out, pushed out. This isn't a fight about roads. It's a fight about what kind of world we leave behind." It spread fast. Local news picked it up, then state stations, then national. Emails came pouring in: support, volunteers, donations. Someone even offered to fund a legal defense fund. But the moment that truly flipped the tide was the one I never expected. Brenda. She showed up on a local TV broadcast, standing in front of the mural wall, her voice shaking. "I tried to control this land," she said, "and I failed. But that failure gave birth to something better. The government has no right to take it now, not after what it took to build." I watched it twice, then 3 times, then turned off the TV and just sat there in silence. Maybe we all get one moment of redemption. Her words helped, more than she knew. The night before the hearing, I didn't sleep much. I walked the perimeter of the sanctuary with Buddy, flashlight in hand, checking every post, every trail camera. Not out of fear, but reverence. I needed to see the land again one last time before strangers tried to reduce it to square footage. The morning of the hearing, the county building overflowed. People spilled onto the lawn, holding signs that read, "Don't pave over peace," "No road through our roots," and "Sanctuary, not Speedway." I walked in with Buddy at my side and Tony beside me. The panel sat at a long table like judges in an old Western courtroom, their eyes tired, their folders full. I stood and spoke, not with anger, but with truth. "You say this is about public use," I began. "Well, come visit on any given day. You'll see children planting seeds, where veterans finding quiet, old folks sitting under the trees like they finally made it out of the noise. You want to pave this land for speed? Then you've never walked it slow." Thunderous applause followed. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled. The panel looked rattled. They called for a vote. And one by one, the decision came down. Against the proposal. Eminent domain was denied. I shook hands, hugged neighbors, cried into Buddy's fur. And then, we threw the biggest damn barbecue Willow Ranch had ever seen. There was music, dancing, goats with bow ties, and someone even set up a dunk tank labeled "Corporate Greed." Brenda showed up, in jeans, no makeup. She brought a pie. "It's apology pie," she said. "Might be undercooked." We laughed. We ate. We breathed. That evening, just as the sun dipped behind the trees, I stood on the porch with my cup of tea and Buddy at my feet. The sanctuary was alive, real, untouchable, earned. But peace is never static. It breathes. And as I looked down the gravel road, a new vehicle rolled in. This one didn't carry threats, carried ideas. A bus full of volunteers from 3 counties away. They stepped off smiling, ready to plant, build, contribute. No contracts, no schemes, just people, just neighbors. One man walked up, shook my hand and said, "You turned a battlefield into a garden. That's legacy." I nodded slowly, because in that moment I knew we hadn't just saved land. We'd built something rare, a sanctuary in the truest sense of the word. And no blueprint in the world could redraw that. The week after the public hearing felt like exhaling after holding your breath for a year. The state backed off. The highway was rerouted. Willow Ranch remained untouched, at least on paper. But something inside me had shifted. I used to think peace was something you could build with a fence, a trail, a little silence. But peace, I learned, is work. The showing up every day, planting seeds even when you know weeds will come back. It's cleaning up messes you didn't make because someone has to. And it's trusting people again, even after they've burned you. I woke up one morning to a soft knock on my door. Not a ranger, not a developer, not a lawyer. It was Sophia, holding a notebook and wearing her best serious face. "We want to start a newsletter," she announced. "For the ranch." I blinked, sipping my coffee. "We?" "Me and Mr. Patel's grandson. He's good with websites. I'm good with stories. We can call it the Willow Watch." I couldn't help but smile. That same day, Tony showed up with lumber. Said we needed to finish the learning shed before the spring planting classes. Mrs. Turner brought jam jars and a sign-up list for elder-led storytelling nights. Even the Jenkins twins, those two kids who once egged my truck by mistake, asked if they could repaint the trail markers. It hit me then. This place had gone from a one-man stand to a living, breathing body. And somehow I'd become its spine. One afternoon, I got a call from a local school district. They'd seen the videos, heard about the sanctuary, asked if they could bring a busload of students out for a field day, get their hands in the dirt, teach them what food looks like before it's wrapped in plastic. I said yes before they finished asking. That Friday, 2 yellow buses pulled up. Dozens of kids spilled out, laughing, tripping over their own feet. Some of them had never seen a goat up close. Others had never touched soil that wasn't in a city park planter. I gave them a tour, Buddy trotting proudly like he was mayor, and by noon we had small hands planting herbs, building bug hotels, even helping patch the chicken coop. A boy named Malik tugged on my sleeve and asked, "Do goats dream?" I told him, "I don't know, but if they do, it's probably of longer naps and more snacks. Just like me." He laughed so hard he dropped his garden gloves. That night, I sat on the porch, legs sore, heart full. I looked over at Buddy, who was already snoring, and whispered, "We're building something real here, old friend. But life doesn't let you coast for long." 2 weeks later, I got a certified letter. Not from the state. From a hedge fund. Apparently, one of the properties bordering the ranch, the old orchard lot, had changed hands. A New York firm had bought it sight unseen. Their letter was short, clinical. "We intend to develop the property in accordance with residential zoning regulations." Just like that, the war had a sequel. I called Vincent. He sighed before I even explained. "They're betting you'll be too tired to fight again," he said. "They don't want the land. They want leverage. Over me. Over what you've built. If they can force access roads or utility easements through your sanctuary, they make their parcel 10 times more profitable." "So what do we do?" I asked. "We make it not worth their time," Vincent said. The next day, I filed a conservation designation for the sanctuary. We launched an education trust, co-signed by the county's Department of Rural Development. We offered free access for approved programs but blocked any commercial entry unless it passed a new set of community standards. Took 2 months. But by the end, that hedge fund sent me a different letter. This one said, "We have reevaluated our plans." I framed that one. Still hangs next to the barn door. Meanwhile, life on the ranch kept pulsing. Sophia's newsletter had 300 subscribers by spring. We hosted our first harvest day. Dozens of families showed up. Kids picked apples. Veterans gave garden tours. Someone brought a fiddle. And under the oak, I saw Brenda again. She sat quietly, eating cornbread, not trying to lead, not apologizing again, just being. I nodded at her. She nodded back. That was enough. And then came the call that changed everything. A national veterans group wanted to partner with us. They'd seen how the sanctuary helped local vets and wanted to sponsor a Green Valor program. Workshops, job training in sustainable farming, peer-led therapy, all based on the Willow Ranch model. I wasn't ready for that kind of scale, but I wasn't saying no either. We drew up a plan. Not to franchise the ranch, but to mentor other towns. Help them convert abandoned lots into micro-sanctuaries. Not every place needed goats and murals. Some needed community gardens. Others just a quiet place to sit. One of our volunteers, a man named Eddie who'd once slept in his car, built the pilot site in Kansas, sent me a picture of his plot with a sign that said, "Peace begins in dirt." I cried when I saw it. By midsummer, the sanctuary was hosting weekly workshops. Sophia was now a junior ambassador. Tony had his own team of tool-handy neighbors. And every Sunday, like clockwork, Buddy led a slow parade of kids along his favorite trail. But the real miracle came one evening just after sunset. I was locking up the feed shed when a car pulled in, dusty, unfamiliar. Out stepped a woman about my age. Silver hair in a braid, soft smile on her lips. "You don't know me," she said, "but I followed your story. And I wanted to say thank you." I looked at her, confused. For what? For proving it's not too late. To fight, to forgive, to fix things. We sat on the porch for over an hour. She told me how her late husband had always wanted to buy land but never got the chance. She said when she saw our story on the news, she felt something unlock inside her. "I sold my condo," she said. "Bought 5 acres upstate. I'm planting lavender. Starting small." I nodded, choked up. "That's not small," I said. "That's everything." That night, I stood in the field alone. Stars above, crickets below. I remembered the first vine on my gate. The smug look on Brenda's face. The bolt cutters. The wall. The mural. The fire. The courtroom. The goats. The laughter. The damn highway. And now, this. I thought I was just defending my right to walk my dog. But in truth, I'd been reclaiming something much older. The right to live without being cornered. The right to breathe without permission. The right to let land be more than profit. I looked down at Buddy. He looked up at me. I whispered, "We did good, didn't we?" He wagged his tail. And in the wind, I swore the land agreed. This wasn't just a victory. It was a beginning. And it belonged to all of us.